Hey, welcome to next episode of Square Up. This is Steve Bussa, campaign manager with GraySquare. Joined today with Mike Grainger, owner and operator of Tink Construction. How's it going today, Mike?
Great, how are you?
I never had a bad day in my life, good brother. Today, Square Up is going to be a fun edition. What we're doing is we're going to be given contrasting arguments or perspectives rather. Mike coming from more of a blue collar, a construction background with the business that he runs and operates, and then me coming from more of the white collar business industry perspective on 5 topics that we're bringing you guys today. So one of the first things that we wanted to start with, Mike, if you want to get us set off here, is like the overall outside perspective of the industry. How do people look at the construction business? What do you think the overall perspective is? How does that affect your business and things of that nature? You can also kind of give us a little bit of background about what it is that your company does, so we know that going into it.
All right, we're 10 years in business. This year we offer a construction service, kind of anywhere from high quality interior remodeling, residential and commercial remodeling as well. New construction will be a 2020 start for us. So I personally think that a lot of our outlook onto our industry is either driven by HGTV or social media, and I guess the snap to that everything can be done when you cut to commercial.
Gotcha. So you guys are appealing to that like first time homeowners, like things of that nature. Someone's looking for like custom builds. Like who's the actual target audience for you guys?
So we have a few different target audiences with our multiple entities, and we'll go typically for kitchen or bathroom models. Is that entry level or first time home buyer, and then we go work our way all the way up to higher end builds, which are full home remodels, or we knock the house down and build something new.
Cool. So you're appealing almost completely to residential then? Do you do any type of commercial business or anything like that?
We do commercial, dabble in a little bit, but we like to spread them out to far and few between.
Cool. How about like big picture stuff? Like ideally, I know you said you're 10 years in, right? The next 10 years go exactly as planned for you. What does that look like in terms of like your business, your role in it? Like what would a perfect 10 years for you be? Would you be appealing to the same people? Is there a certain growth plan that you have, or what would that look like?
So, great question. I would have to say that in the first 10 years leading up to where we are today, has been basically a completely different market. I would say probably the lower to entry level to mid level. Now, 10 years in, we're mostly towards the higher end of that market. A lot of that comes from the recession of 2008 and how we were able to bounce back from that, not only as a company but an industry. And we're looking, kind of projecting next market correction. And we're kind of getting into the market of clients that won't be so affected by it.
So again, like 10 years from now, what does that look like? Best case scenario, like who?
Best case scenario. I mean, I would probably have to say that higher end market, probably top 10% of people spending money, residential wise, with their homes and or purchase of new homes.
So same thing. So you're still looking at first time homeowners. I guess like best thing that would be able to happen to you then is if like the living wages went up so that people could afford homes younger. Like what I mean, like things like that nature would be what expands for you guys.
Yeah, I would say that's probably our bread and butter. But I think what we're projecting to work for is, like I said, that top 10% where clients are specifically searching us out to do the work for them. That's probably our best bet. 10 years from now, I'd say we would be providing everything that we install for the most part in our residential design, including the design itself. So I say that's a goal.
Absolutely. So we talked about this off screen, so to speak, a little bit. Whereas if you can provide a service and the goods for that service as well, you basically double dip and double down on the cash that's available per sale instead of hoping that you have more opportunity for more sales, right?
Absolutely. It's actually kind of more of a triple thing. So typically the contractor or an installer is brought in after a design is made and those goods are already selected and were purchased at that point. So now we're not only installing the product, we're providing, fabricating that product, making the markup and sale revenue on that. And on top of that, we're actually providing the design work. So we're really kind of hitting the market all three sides.
Awesome. Who's your ideal person to talk to? Like for you personally, like if you're involved in a company, who's like the fun person to talk to?
I would probably have to say one of our project managers, Trevor. He's a good going guy, and
shout out to Trevor.
Yep, shout out to Trevor. I really like I really like the clients. I think that's why I'm really in this business, is because every client provides a different scope. So new setting, new scope, new set of clients, new style, new taste. Just nothing's the same. Everything we move from project to project, and I'd say everything we always learn something new. So that's probably a big one.
Gotcha. So like from the other side then, like the white collar side of this, like we're appealing almost exclusively to businesses. Like as a marketing firm, it's our job to like, we don't have the customers coming directly to us saying like, hey, give us a product. We have businesses coming to us saying, push our product for us. So like best case scenario with us is anytime that there's a new boom in technology, without name dropping the clients that we work for, like every advancement that we have becomes limitless type opportunity that we have to market it to new individuals. Especially since like GraySquare has taken an interest in brand marketing and creating GraySquare as a brand. The whole reason we're doing a podcast like this, the reason that we have a Spotify playlist, the reason that we have different YouTube videos that are coming up, the reason that we have like such a social media presence in general is the ability to just adapt to whatever comes. So like that's pretty much huge to us, and it's always going to be pretty much entirely, as far as I can tell, it's going to be based on like small businesses to large corporations. Will always be like the range that we're looking for with that. Right. So like again, like entirely different worlds apart. Whereas yours is more reliant on individuals. We need existing companies that need customers, which hopefully neither of those things ever go away.
Right.
Worst part about your appeal in the industry, like to customers.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty dated. I think a lot of clients or prospective clients that are looking for a remodeler have a certain expectation or lack thereof, I guess, of a professional product or provided service. So I would say a lot of that appeal would have to be probably more towards the negative.
Gotcha. Cool. So for us, from like the white collar perspective with this, the downside to that, I guess, like the worst part of that, the appeal, is definitely that the reputation sticks with you forever. It could be the best thing in the world to happen to you, or the worst thing. And I think you relate with that too, as like a business owner. Like if you hit a year's streak of bad reviews, that could be it for an industry, you know what I mean, or for a business. You would have to go through a rebranding, or you know what I mean, a renaming or something.
Absolutely.
Like that. We've seen it a million times over. It only takes a couple horror stories, you know what I mean, to go down. And it's like marketing itself is such a tight knit, like good old boys club, that your reputation gets out very, very quickly. You make one or two poor decisions throughout the year, and you'll never hear of that company again. It's like one of the things that we pride ourselves on, you know, GraySquare, is being so transparent and in the eye of the public, because we're never trying to hide from someone. It's usually the companies that you can't find or hear anything about.
Right.
They're the ones that have something to hide. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think a lot of it has to go back to branding. Like you said, we started branding. We rebranded our business in 2013. And from there on, we've seen exponential growth just because of the initial branding of the company was very generic. Second half of that tenure was more of specific branding for the company, social media, and kind of change the expectation you would for a contractor, not just for us, but for the industry as a whole. So yeah, I would agree.
Cool, awesome. So one of the other things we were talking about, I think it was like a really good point for us to tackle here, is we were talking about just like tenure. I know you had gone on about, you know, why someone would go to you is just because you're better than everybody else, and there are other people who charge the same amount you do and provide just crappy work, right? So as far as tenure goes, how long is it going to take you? If I'm interested in the construction business, the remodeling business, you know, whichever aspect of it I wanted to get to, from a blue collar perspective, as someone who's starting at base zero, you know what I mean? The 18-year-old Mike comes out of high school. How long does it take to get good?
I would say that all comes down to the company that you go work for. In New Jersey, we have over 40,000 construction companies, whether they're interior remodeling or commercial. So for having 40,000 outfits, roughly, for just the state of New Jersey where we're from, it makes it very hard to win over clients. What it also does is dilutes the market, meaning clients now think that it's something appropriate to have a contractor come out and bid a job against 5 other contractors in the same town.
Same way we would with buying a car.
Absolutely. The only thing is that when you're going to buy a car, you know exactly what you want, right? So with a contractor and you're trying to do a project, trying to relay those things across to your contractor never either comes out right or it's never the same. So if you ask have 3 prices to come in, if you explained it 3 different ways or maybe didn't add specific things to one conversation to another, then you would of course get 3 different prices.
You're saying there's like a whisper down the lane effect.
Absolutely.
Whereas I may have included every detail to the first one and gotten a true to fact estimate on that.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I've given that same pitch 15 times, I'm leaving out the nooks and crannies, and I think I'm getting a better deal for what is essentially going to come down to watered down work.
Yeah, and that kind of correlates right back to what you asked about, 18-year-old Mike, looking for getting into this business. I think a lot of it has to do with who you work for, because typically us, about 5 years ago, we actually stopped bidding against other contractors. If the client specifically doesn't want to hire us, we don't come out here and compete. All those contractors do I'll spend my time marketing, doing that quote, giving it over to the client. They'll take that quote and bring it to the next guy and say, beat it by X amount. So that's that dilution that I'm talking about.
Playing devil's advocate a bit here, is there any part of that could be good for the consumer? Like, I come from an industry where it's like competition always works out in the consumer's favor. You know what I mean? If you have one cable company in an area and that's the only cable company, they basically have the ability to charge you whatever they want. The consumer's the one that gets hurt at that point.
Absolutely.
Whereas when you have options, maybe not 40,000 options, but when you have options in general, I think it does end up playing out, you know what I mean, like personally, like correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking for your insight on this.
So at this point, I think I will disagree, and here's why. So if you have multiple quotes and a contractor can come in at a lower cost, that's a contractor that hasn't learned his lesson yet. So if you work for a contractor like that, they're going to lower their cost to give that client a deal or obviously to land that sale. The problem is with us as our company, we're experienced enough to know that if something costs a specific amount, that's exactly why our costs are what they are. It's not a markup. It's not a margin criteria. We know what things cost through experience.
It can be that, right?
It can be if you want to gouge, but
there's no way you're giving out as is. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you're not paying $100 for a piece of wood and then charging $100 for a piece of wood.
Right. So it's not just services rendered, but it's also it's that, and then on top of that, you have to make enough money to be in business next year. Mm-hmm. So you have your other competitor who's also bidding a bathroom for say, and
they're not going to exist 24
months from now. So they'll take the work because it keeps them busy, but they're not profiting. Meaning they're not making enough money to be in business and concur and grow. Those companies typically fade and dwindle out, and they come back next year with a new name, typically no license insurance.
And you would say they're hurting the culture.
Absolutely, they're giving a bad name to everyone, good contractors alike.
Who do you blame for that?
I would probably say our previous generation.
Do you like specifically, who would you blame? Like, was there a time that you can think of, or a company that started doing that to where that became common practice? Because you don't go from a handful of remodeling agencies to 40,000 overnight. Mm-hmm. Like, somebody had to figure out that they could do that. You know what I mean? Like,
so I would probably have to say niche markets. So our previous generation, everyone did everything from start to finish. One company in-house, all provided once. Now everyone's a specialist. So they may specialize in a particular thing through the cold seasons, then again specialize in particular things on interior during.
Are they really
summer
specializing,
seasons.
or you think it's just marketing?
It's complete marketing, and I think a lot of it is, they're basically hoodwinking their clients into thinking that they are specialists or experts at what they're doing. And really, it's a marketing scheme, and it's a way to rack the margins up. And then again, at the end of the day, if the customer service part of that isn't there, it again looks bad outlook for the industry as a whole.
So 10 years is an impressive tenure for anybody running their own business. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. My father's been in the business for 38 years, and
never mind. 10 years is no longer impressive.
Yes,
38 years is way more impressive.
So, and in those 38 years, I would say my father didn't start making money until the 20th year. So for us to net our first $1 million at year 10,
congratulations!
Thank you. It's a big thing for us too, because I would say back in 2009, I think we ended our first year out in a negative. I had to reinvest whatever I could back into that business in 2010 and 2011, and then obviously getting to 2013 for rebranding. So I think a lot of it has to do with how your market looks at you. We're very transparent as well on social media. We show the clients not just a finished product, but every step of
process,
it.
Right? You were saying that.
Exactly.
That's
so
awesome.
that process we really push is because that's where a lot of the other contractors will hide. They'll hide all the corners they cut. We show and promote the fact that we don't cut corners, and this is exactly why we charge more, because we're not hoodwinking those clients. We're giving them the ultimate value that they're paying for.
Awesome. You said 40,000 right now companies, right? I'm going to put you on the spot. Where do you rank Tink between number 1 to number 40,000?
So in the state of New Jersey, we are number 128.
That was an incredibly specific and honest answer that I didn't think you'd be prepared for. That's awesome. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yes.
What's the goal, or not the goal? What's the plan, rather? Because obviously, number 1's the goal.
Right.
What's the plan for taking out the 127 people in front of you that you're allowed
I'll
to
be honest
say
with
on
you.
mic?
There's a few that will always stay above us because they're a generational business, and they're actually mentors for us. So it's something that I probably wouldn't want to go all the way up to the top. I would probably be okay ranking in a little higher than where we're at. Obviously, out of the 40,000, a lot of those are specialty. They don't gross more than 100,000 a year. So those will kind of all fall to the wayside. But the 128 ranking is not just quality assurance through customers and their criteria. It's also how we've expanded in the past 3 years. So that's how they kind of rate that as far as a regional thing. We have a group for international builders. And
who does that? Who's actually the one that ranks it?
The International Building Association.
Gotcha.
So those kind of, they kind of go through the list and see where people are at as far as customer service rating, Better Business Bureau markings, basically things like that to show the clients kind of what to expect and really who's on the up and up as far as not just increasing scale, but also who's providing the best value for the quote.
Cool. Back to the original question, which was like years to get good. And the answer that you gave was obviously depends who you go with. That's how we got on that tangent, right? Let's say somebody goes with a legit company like you guys or someone under your umbrella or one of your generational companies, right? Walk me through that, the answer to then. Like if I do end up going with one of the legitimate, you know what I mean, like companies.
Yeah, all right. So you have two sides of that. You have a union and you have non-union.
My dad was an ironworker for 35 years. Let's go union.
All right, union. Typically, you have to have at least 3 to 5 years apprenticeship, working alongside guys who've had at least a minimum of 5 years in on their brotherhood. So that's probably the longer lead. It's a higher pay rate. You are able to get home at a decent time as far as work-life balance. Like I said, the pay rate is a little higher, but I would say a lot of that comes down to, in a union, if you're good, you stay busy. If you don't instantly, do what you need to do right out of the gate, you kind of get thrown to the wayside on the bench. and those guys typically will migrate towards a non-union company to pick up that slack of work. So versus non-union, you're kind of starting out as a cash pay every week. Provide what you have. You need you need gas in the car. So cost-wise, it's low. Pay is also exponentially low when you start. 2 years as a laborer, typically, and then from there you kind of get into what you would air quotes specialize in,
right.
Whether you want to partake in tile or carpentry or finish carpentry, finishing in that matter. So I would say if you went in with us to go from a laborer, a starting standpoint, to being either a product manager or a lead carpenter, I would say it's anywhere from 5 to 7 years.
Cool. So you're looking at it pretty similar either way then, right? You said like 6 to 8 for one and 5 to 7 for the other.
Pretty close. Union's going to stretch out a little longer. They're going to want to make you go through a lot more safety testing, very vigorous on safety and OSHA regulations. Whereas non-union, it's a liability insurance coverage. It's kind of, what you do is on you. If you make the mistake, you're absolutely liable for it. Versus,
and for clarification, Tink is union or non-union?
Non-union.
Non-union.
Yeah.
Is there a benefit for you guys? I know you said it's a lower pay rate and it takes a little bit longer. You know what I mean, like getting started, stuff like that. What's the overall benefit for somebody going that route?
I would probably say, as far as a business owner standpoint, it doesn't eat into my overhead, my overall cost for the year, overall expenses,
union dues and things of that nature.
Yeah, that absolutely. We're exponentially lower on what we pay out, so technically it goes directly relates towards our net at the end of the year.
And you're referring to OSHA, like I know what that is. That's the safety laws and stuff like that.
Yep.
Does that apply to non-union as well?
Absolutely, yeah, okay. Absolutely. Because non-union is typically on a lot smaller of a scale.
Right.
We're not so, seen through the magnifying glass, as you will.
Not seen through the magnifying glass, but you don't have guys chasing each other with nails guns on the site as well. Like there's a far cry between 128 and 40K.
Absolutely.
Cool. From the other side, I guess, like, this is such a subjective question for us. I almost hesitate to really get into it, right? As far as how long it takes to get good white collar, all right? If I use myself as an example, I feel like at 16 years old, I was already the best in the world. Like, it's such a cocky type mentality for people who are good at this. The gift of gab and actually having like a talent, like you don't have a talent necessarily for like precision carpentry. You know what I mean? Like there's so much of that is a skill that is like practiced over and over again. No one wakes up knowing how many inches to cut a certain block at an angle. You know what I mean? Like a lot of that is education and like a hands-on skill. Whereas talking is something that there are people out there, that are just naturally gifted at talking themselves out of situations and into sales and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like I started off at 16 years old working for a telemarketing agency, selling like MediaCom and Comcast and stuff like that. Vonage in Canada. I did like international sales and everything like that. Okay. I'm 16 years old at like the top of a company getting promoted to a supervisor position. In the same instance, I'm not sure that every average Joe, you know what I mean, at 18 years old, at 16 years old is capable of doing that.
Yeah.
I think the difference here, I'm going to go out and feel free to argue with me about this, right? But if like in my mind, the way that it is like anybody could be good at carpentry if there's just the math that we're looking at. If it's not like, hey, come up with a creative design. If it's not like, hey, there needs to be a level of creativity in general. If you're just talking about be able to make this structure and follow this blueprint, I feel like anybody can do that. I feel like if you're good at math, if you can follow instructions and you're not a complete a-hole, like that's something that you can figure out, right? Whereas in sales and white collar stuff in business, it's just not for everybody. You know what I mean? Like there are people with social anxieties and stuff like that where it's like the biggest fear in the world is public speaking. And to just throw anybody on a stage in front of people to run a press conference or something like that, you know what I mean? You have most people buckling, you know what I mean? So where like it's almost like an exclusive club to be able to operate at a high level. Now, how long it takes you to get good at it, I said that like just to clarify my answer. I do believe that there are some people who are naturally good at it, to where it takes zero time and just a natural given ability. But I also think that there is a group of people that will never be good at it. That no matter what they do or try or et cetera, this doesn't matter. You're never going to be talented at what it is that we do in terms of business, right? In terms of sales, in terms of direct marketing, team building, leadership, management, like being able to relate to people, being able to teach, train, and develop 16 different personality types, auditory, visual, kinesthetic learners, being able to like really go hands-on with just like building a business. You relate to that, you know what I mean? Like building a business, the entrepreneurship and everything like that.
Yeah.
The average Joe, like at 18 years old, 16 years old, when they get into their first sales gig or something like that, right? To get good at the sales side, I'm going to say 6 months. Like if you have the propensity to learn,
right,
6 months tops.
To get their feet wet. And
yeah.
To kind of
figure out if you can handle rejection. Figure out how, you know what I mean. Like
right.
like if you have the metal for it, and 6 months to get good at that. Probably another year to figure out if you have the temperament to teach, train, or develop another person, or if you're just going to be cocky because you're good at something. So you're looking at a year and a half for that like mid-level team lead kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
okay, all right. From my end, I would have to say, we take on new hires, and especially apprentices, directly from union training centers all over New Jersey and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So we know within the first 10 days
really
whether that guy's going to be able to do this or not. So to a point, I can say, yeah, if you're given a set of blueprints, here's the necessary tools, here's the knowledge, here's the information, now go and handle it. I understand where that kind of perspective comes in at, but we know right away whether someone's going to be able to actually execute the job or not.
What's your red flags for that? Like give me the 10-day window. If they do X, Y, and Z, they'll never be good at this.
So if we have to repeat ourselves probably more than 3 times over the same task, if there's a 4th or 5th reoccurring instance where it's not done a specific way, that means obviously you can't take orders. It means you're not coachable. If you're not coachable, you're not teachable. Doesn't matter whether you're blue collar or in a white collar standpoint, you're not going to pick it up. And I think the other thing is work ethic. And we look to see where that trainee or that apprentice, they should be listening and paying attention to such a level that when you go to pick something up or reach for this or move on to the next step, if they're not having enough work ethic to anticipate the next move, then really no point in kind of keeping them on. That's when you kind of move on.
So I don't know if this is even playing devil's advocate here, but like to make a point with this, right? Would you say that that's necessarily that person can't do it and you're getting rid of them? Because that doesn't what it sounds like. What it sounds like you're saying is you guys just have high standards to within 10 days they can't work for me. Correct. Not necessarily they can't ever
work for the industry.
Good at this. Right.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm sure we're a little picky, probably more pickier than most. But that goes back to experience and overall. You want to provide the client with the best service you possibly can, and if your team's not on the same page, then it's obviously not going to work. And I've learned the hard way that if you don't nip it right in the butt at the very beginning, it becomes a horrible expense and will drive you nuts in the long run. Absolutely,
and that's where we agree at. Being good at management in general. Often comes from being able to understand that some people are just a lost cause or are just a liability. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you're that good, which hats off to you. If you've got it down to 10 days to be able to decide if somebody's a fit, like I still think in our industry right now, I can tell you within the first month maybe. You know what I mean? Whether or not someone has the propensity to get to the level that we need. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain level of jitters that we allow for when dealing with the public, and you know what I mean, dealing with sales.
Yeah. It's a learning curve, I guess.
Yeah,
probably more so with the reacting with other people as far as that goes. A lot of our guys that come to us, they don't want to deal with the client. They don't want to deal with any of those type of social settings.
Right.
They want to be said, what do I need to do this week, and let me go and do it. So that goes and correlates back to work ethic too. So I think high work ethic is probably your best bet as far as in our industry. It's not how strong you are, how big you are. It's about being able to anticipate the next move. So if you can make, as a laborer and apprentice and you're starting out, I have to take a hit financially to have my higher end guys, lead carpenters, project management roles, training those apprentices, which slows their efficiency. If we can train those apprentices to increase the efficiency of the higher end guys, ultimately it nets to a higher line for us at the end of the year.
You make more, you make more money.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's all about the fiscal year, right?
Yeah.
Cool. This is gonna be a fun topic for today, right? We were kind of talking about this earlier. Industry pitfalls, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the downside? 10 years in to running your own business, to being in construction. What are the aches and pains, so to speak, or not even figuratively, I guess, literally at some point of your industry?
You have a work-life balance. That's always tough, especially being an owner-operator.
Well, that's not construction, right? Because that's entrepreneurism.
That's
anyone, the work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I would probably have to say when it comes to you lean more towards physical. You figure I've been in this in total about 16 years now, and I have moved to a project management and basically almost an office area because my body is starting to shut down in certain areas. Bad hips, bad back, bad knees, and those are because I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone telling me to wear those knee pads or put those safety glasses on or put those earplugs in to protect your hearing. I didn't have anyone to kind of tell me that. So I think it goes back to a company's culture and what they can provide to who they're hiring. So if I had that opportunity when I first started into the trade, I probably would be a lot more
sound.
Yeah, and physically active, and I was just a lot better bearing physically. I'm pretty, body's pretty beat up, and I'm only in this 15, 16 years now.
Is there a case being made to say the exact opposite of that, though? Because if you look at it from our perspective, before I get into my thing, a lot of sales is inactivity. Like if you're sitting at a desk with a headset on the entire time, you're getting zero exercise.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like there's going to be weight issues. There's going to be, could be. I mean, like somebody who's good at what they do or smart is going to the gym afterwards. You know what I mean? Taking care of themselves, eating right. I would say the vast majority in America are not doing. Exactly.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Yeah. So I mean, there are two sides to it. We have guys that work for us that are extremely active, always at the gym. Always energetic at work. Always playing safety first and wearing back braces, etc. So it could definitely go both ways.
Cool. Do you think there's a turning point? Is it like first 5 years I'm fit and sexy, and then 6 to 10 it's like give me the back
honestly,
brace?
I would probably have to go with that, and it's because they didn't start off with good habits. They didn't start off with any habits, and typically that goes back again to company culture. If you're not, if the information's not being sent across to those employees, and they really don't know where else to look, then they're going to do what they see. Monkey see, monkey do. So if you bring in an apprentice and you see 5, 6 guys not wearing ear protection, not wearing eye protection, it's a good chance they're not going to do it either. So we, us leveling and
why am I going to listen to you tell me to wear eyewear when you're not wearing eyewear?
Exactly.
Right.
So we kind of eliminate that in the field. And as I move to more of a sales and product management role, I'm still out on the job site, a couple of days a week. Trevor, the guy we were just talking to earlier.
Shout out to Trevor.
Yep. We just bumped him up to a project management role. He recently broke his hand, so he was one of our top lead carpenters. So we kind of took a hit as a company by doing that, and I think any other company would probably have him just sit home until he's healed for liability issues. And then overall expenses. But we actually bumped him up to a product management role, so we can kind of train our new hires and apprentices our standards. So I guess that's a big one.
Making use of what you got.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this from an entirely different perspective, from like the white collar side. Obviously, what we talked about, I do think that there's probably a weight issue in like telemarketing or office jobs in general, like in business. I could not agree more with you that culture is going to dictate the impact of that on an office. I've been in offices where the person running the business went to judo twice a week. You know what I mean? They had their guys going out with them and use that as a bonding opportunity, and has them incorporating exercise and healthy body into what it means to be a business owner. We don't want to make $1 billion but not be able to move to spend it. I want to be in good body and health. You know what I mean? By the time it comes to celebrate the fruits of your labor 10 years down when you're celebrating your first million. You know what I mean?
Right.
But aside from that, I think there is a huge fun conversation to have. I think there's a huge psychological transformation that people in our industry go through that I would consider to be the huge industry pitfall or is detrimental to us. There's a certain disassociation that happens when you learn how to manipulate people that you can't help but trickle into your personal life. It becomes very difficult to differentiate when you and I are having a regular conversation as boys and grabbing a beer, and when I am purposely saying things in a certain pattern, or I'm purposely placing emphasis on words in certain places to get something out of it at the end of the day. And it literally becomes so like to a point where it's unintentional even, to where it's just how you talk and how you operate, and things start to come a little bit easier naturally. It becomes harder to develop personal relationships. It becomes harder to develop intimate relationships. At what point are you just become really, really good at coercing situations in your favor, as opposed to what's genuine, what's real? Did this person really have affection towards me, or did I just learn how to be charming at some point and pick up on people's buying signs and things like that? There's a certain psychopathy to it, almost, to where you're able to separate yourself from the emotion and portray it. We teach our guys, if you're having a bad day, I expect a smile on your face regardless. And that's almost insane. You know what I mean? We're teaching people how to lie and hide their emotions. You know what I mean? If you're doing that for 10 years, if you're doing that for 20 years at some point, it gets to the point where it becomes difficult, I think, to have real relationships, to have a genuine emotion, maybe even, because it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? There's someone that's going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, oh my God, that's terrible. There's someone else that's like, that's awesome. I want to be in control of my emotions. I don't want my emotions to control me. I want to be able to manipulate decisions to be better. And that's definitely how I look at it. I'm one of those guys who's like, if I could just manipulate the rest of the world to do what I want. I just made a post on Instagram how world domination or bust is the goal. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? But would you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts on that? Can you see where I'm going with that?
I can see where you're going with that, and I think being blue collar industry, I can see both ends of that, because one, certain sales calls we go out to that could collectively be 2 or 3 months of my time with a particular set of clients, and I know I have to adjust the way I react or act, or the way things are said, or discretion, particularly to clients. And you kind of train yourself to stick to that, so that you come off extremely consistent to one client and their wants and needs. Then trying to just, pull the cord on that and go home at 6 o'clock. And
it's not always easy.
It's not always easy, absolutely not. And then, and wearing another hat and providing another role as product management, you have to talk to all your employees a specific way, so that they understand.
Hopefully, so no HR issues.
Exactly. So that kind of stuff. And then and then at the end of the day, you kind of got to leave it at the door before you come in. So I can relate to that.
So we were going to get into retirement next. I think I'm going to chalk that one because I just came up with an awesome topic. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. We're going off the cuff now. We're going rogue. You just brought up a good point. We started talking about human resource. We both are managing businesses, right? 2019, 2018 has brought on a very different culture than we ever have. And without targeting anybody or ridiculing anybody, people nowadays are different than people 10 years ago when
Absolutely.
you first started in the business, right? How has this affected your industry? From like I can vividly remember my father being an ironworker of 35 years, telling me stories about getting drunk while they're at work and guys holding each other over the side of buildings and getting into bar fights and then going back to the job. Like I could tell you stories for days about that happening, and there's no way that the same things are happening. I mean, maybe there is, but in my mind,
not on the same level.
Yeah, it's just impossible in today's climate with the sensitivity of everybody and the way people talk to each other nowadays and aren't allowed to talk to each other and things like that. What have been the major changes, hurdles, differences, however you want to word it? Like just what's the difference now?
Well, you brought a great topic, sensitivity. I would have to say that the younger generations that are starting out in this industry are extremely sensitive. They're very, as you'd say, prima donnas. They're not ready to get their hands dirty. They don't think that a hard day's work is actually what a day's work is.
More entitlement.
A lot of entitlement. The fact that a lot of work ethic again doesn't come naturally. It needs to be taught.
Can you teach work ethic? Because I I find myself repeatedly saying that I need to hire people who have positive attitudes and work ethic because you can't teach work ethic.
Well, yes and no. I think a lot of the work ethic goes back to discipline early on. It's who raised you.
You're not allowed to say that anymore.
Well, I will say, but coming from blue collar, maybe I can. But I would have to say that the way I was raised is what's gotten me to be an owner operator of a business rather than an employee. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and really, and kind of I would say in air quotes how you're raised on a job site. I was particularly raised on a job site as a kid, so I knew the ins and outs before I started my business. And I knew what I wanted, what I didn't want, and I knew what it was going to take to get there. I think that's what kind of created work ethic, and the fact that I wasn't sensitive to it, and I kind of focus on people who aren't, kind of fit that same profile where you're not sensitive to his and hers conversation. It's more of what can they produce, not as an employee, but for personal goals as well. But what can you produce? And I think that directly correlates back to work ethic.
Cool. From the business standpoint, the white collar standpoint, my industry is upside down from how it was when I got into it. My first day ever in the field, I started off in like door-to-door marketing. I'm not gonna put anyone's name in this or anything like that, but first day, I'm going around doing door-to-door. It was February 6th, and there was half a foot of snow on the ground, and like I was in business shoes walking around all day. And I come back to the office at the end of the day, ready to neg out. And I'm just, my manager looks at me and he's like, "How was your day?" And I was like, "Let me tell you." I was like, I didn't even notice it was door to door when I was going to start. I came here for an operations management position. My feet hurt. I tore my leggings. Like, I was so mad about everything. Landon's going to kill me for saying leggings. It was like thermals because it was cold outside. Oh, God, I'm never going to hear the end of this. I can already hear it. And my manager looks at me and he goes, "Don't worry, I got something for you. It's not a problem." He opens up the bottom drawer and he throws a box of tampons at me. Like, that was my first day in the industry. And if that were to happen nowadays, like, I can't even imagine what the headlines would be in that scenario. Like,
absolutely.
It went from like almost like a fraternity, boys club type, you know what I mean, like environment to where no one wants to get sued. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we're very focused on the money. And you could make an argument that it's better or worse. There's probably an entire podcast worth of what's better, you know what I mean, for everybody or for the money.
Right.
It definitely raised the level of professionalism. You can argue that it lowered the level of fun or, you know what I mean, like exclusivity and stuff like that. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with not hazing people,
right?
Even though that's how we were raised, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like you toughed it out, you did it. It was part of the job. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you couldn't do it and you quit and you went home, well, that's fine. And you're not the type of person that was good for this job, and that's how it was.
Right.
That could have been what kept a lot of businesses small. You know what I mean? Like, especially in industries that I'm in where like headcount means everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can only generate so much money by yourself. You need a sales force. You need, you know what I mean? Like project managers and stuff like you said, like you need headcount in order to do those things. So we're old and grumpy at this point to where we complain about the new generation and the new way of doing things, but we might be benefiting from it as well, just like out of necessity almost. You know what I mean? Just to still exist.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? All right, let's get into the last thing right here. About to wrap this up. I appreciate you taking time out with me today. I want to go over the hiring process, right? So, like, who do you look for in terms of who you hire? If I wanted to work for you right now, if I'm intrigued by this podcast, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, dude, I want to be part of the top 128 out of 40,000 people, you know, or 40,000 companies in Jersey that are doing remodeling. How do I get in touch with this person? Like, who is it that we're looking for that should even bother applying as a candidate? You know what I mean? Like, what's the demo, so to speak, that you're looking for without getting yourself in trouble? And how do I get in touch with you?
So I would probably have to say we went through our string of young kids, and young meaning 16 to 20. So I'd probably have to say 21 and up. And someone who's looking to make a career out of this. This is not a summer job. This isn't a fling. This is something that we take extremely seriously. We have 3 employees that have over 40 years in this industry. They take their jobs very seriously, and whoever we hire has to train under them. And they're the ones who ultimately make the decision whether they stay in the company or not. I do not. I actually remove myself from that situation because I'm not in the field all day, every day. So if I were to make that judgment call, it'd be incorrect or maybe a little naive. So I probably would say someone who's willing to have a strong work ethic, someone who wants to produce on a daily basis. They want to be able to do something and look back and see that what they've done is real, it's tangible. And someone who loves to be active and constantly working. We never do the same thing every day. Everything's always different every day, and I think that's why a lot of people get drawn to it. But again, it goes back to work ethic. So I would say a lot of it, and contacting us is through Instagram at TransformationbyTCS.
Say that again, spell it out for them.
TransformationbyTCS, all one word, on Instagram.
Cool. Make sure you give them a follow. I'm not going to plug our stuff because they already know who we are if they're listening to this. I just want to give you a chance to kind of shine on that. I appreciate you taking the time out with me today, Mike. I actually had a really good time kind of going over all this with you. We're going to be getting out of here now. Make sure you guys check us out on Instagram, on Facebook, Spotify for the playlist, YouTube, on everything. We're taking over the world one podcast at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
all right, man. All right, we'll talk to you guys next time. Appreciate you guys chiming in with us today.